Welcome everyone to this video. My name is Remy and today we'll talk about a new topic, which is trekking. So why do we want to talk about trekking? Well, first of all, for me, that's one of my passion. I really enjoy going for a trek. It gives me a chance to be connected with the nature, since I'm working pretty much most of my day in front of a laptop. And that's why today, based on my experience of doing different type of treks, I would like to share some understanding between three main treks, which are the Kilimanjaro, as well as the Everest Base Camp and the Annapurna Base Camp. So I mentioned those three treks, but now what's the difference between those treks? Well, the first thing to understand is each of those treks might have different route, so you might not have to follow always the same one. In the case, for example, of the Kilimanjaro, you have three main ways to get to the Kilimanjaro, which are different, obviously. I would say one of the most popular is the Mashame route. So Mashame route takes around 6 to 7 days in order to get to the summit of the Kilimanjaro. That's something important because you might want during your trek to have flexibility in terms of days, in terms of how many days you want to take, because maybe you were thinking you are not fit enough and then you realize, well, it's pretty easy, we want to do it quicker. Or the other way around, you maybe overestimated how fit you are and then you realize that you are struggling, so you might want to take extra day. So Machame route is pretty good because it would give you that option on day 4 to choose if you want to make it in 6 to 7 days based on. In my video, I'll talk mainly about what I did, which is 6 days, and that was really great experience. So Machame route, you are talking about 62 kilometers over 6 days, just to give you an idea and to start comparing the three different ones. So for Everest Base Camp, that's going to be pretty similar. You will have different route. The one, let's say the main one, can take different amount of days. So it's mainly between 10 to 12 days, and that's something in my case that I did in 11 days. So you get also this chance of being able to adjust the time based on how good you feel during the trek. Don't try again to shrink it too much, because then you would have to adapt from altitude point of view. So that's going to be an important point during this trek. So the Everest Base Camp would be 130 kilometers from Lukla. So that's way longer than Kilimanjaro. So keep that in mind. And then finally, the last one would be the Annapurna Base Camp. So Annapurna Base Camp will be talking about 67 kilometers. Again, Annapurna Base Camp, you can change where you start. So you could get a jeep, let's say, to get you closer to it if you have less day. That's also an option. In my case, I did it in 6 days. In this video, we'll cover the different aspects that everyone would be thinking about when they go for a trek, which is, for example, the comfort. Is it comfortable? Am I going to sleep in a tent, in a guest house? How that's gonna basically look like? The scenaries. I mean, I'm sure most of you don't trek just for the sake of trekking. You are there in order also to enjoy the scenaries. Scenaries would differ between those treks. It would be completely different. So we'll be talking about that as well. Then, obviously, the fitness level. All those treks are different. Like, they don't require the same capabilities. So which one fits more for you? If you are a beginner, if you are used to trek every weekend, that's going to be definitely different. Then I guess question of price as well. You might have a budget, you want to stick to that budget, so we'll discuss around that. And then finally about what else around this trek I can do, because I'm guessing if you are flying, for example, to Nepal, you might not just go for the trek, you might also want to enjoy everything around the country. So what are the different, let's say, options for those countries when it comes to outside the trek? So those are the main category we'll be focusing on. And the first one we'll start with is the comfort. We all are different. And for some of you, what might feel comfortable might not be comfortable for someone else. If you are a man, if you are a woman, that might change as well, what we consider comfortable or not. So let's talk first about that. I would say out of those three treks, the most comfortable are probably the one in Nepal, which means Annapurna Base Camp and Everest Base Camp. The reason is most of your night would be in a guest house. Everything, let's say, that you need would be there, meaning if you need toilets, if you need shower, that's gonna get more and more expensive as soon as you get higher in altitude. But let's say if you would like to, that it's there. So just to give you an idea, a shower when it gets to 4,000 meters altitude might cost you around $5 to $6 maybe. So yeah, that might be expensive, but if you really need that, then you have that option. So I would say if I compare Annapurna Base Camp with Everest Base Camp, I would say that's pretty similar in terms of comfort, because you will have those guest house, you can bring your own food, you can have food cooked from the guest house. So that's pretty similar. On the other end, on the Kilimanjaro side, that's way more challenging. If you are not really into sleeping in a tent, you will probably not be able to wash yourself. So the way to do would be to get some water from the river, and then you will try to clean yourself with some wipes. So yeah, maybe for some of you that might be more challenging to do that. So just keep that in mind. If you are really picky in terms of comfort, then you would probably rather go with the option in Nepal. It felt maybe a bit colder on Kilimanjaro because you are in a tent. So definitely that might feel colder. And I think one of my mistakes, like many people, is everyone thinks this is Africa, so it might be hot, but then it definitely not. It's not hot at all. So I would say don't think that Kilimanjaro will be hotter, because that's not the case. And yeah, keep that in mind. But in any case, that's gonna be cold. So yeah, be ready for that. So when talking about comfort, quite often there is one question that comes up: is where do I go to the toilets? Well, in Nepal, that's pretty simple. You will find toilets on the way, you will find toilets where you sleep. That's gonna be easy. In the Kilimanjaro, that's not as easy. You might find like a couple of houses where you could go, some guide or trek, for example, or some operator would provision like temporary toilets, which is pretty much like a hole in the ground. But yeah, keep that in mind. If that's something that is an issue for you, well, that's something you will have to deal with. So now we'll talk about fitness level. As I mentioned, those treks are from different lengths. Like Everest Base Camp, for example, will be 130 kilometers, while Annapurna Base Camp in Kilimanjaro would be 65 kilometers. However, is it the only thing you should check? No, definitely not, because you also have other things that comes into the picture. One of the things that's going to be important, it's going to be the altitude, because based on how quick you will get at higher altitude, that might give you some dizziness and you might not feel the best. So this is why, for example, during the Everest Base Camp, you would have at least 2 days of acclimatation that you might not have, for example, with the Kilimanjaro. So with Kilimanjaro, at least for me, I felt way more the effect of altitude. So that's something that is important to take into consideration. The easiest of the three of them to me was the Annapurna Base Camp. So don't get me wrong, you have times that are tough, but to be honest, it's pretty much every day. I would say 6 hours of walk, and it's pretty constant, so it doesn't change that much. So welcome to the village of Gorakshep. So that's the departure point for going to the base camp, as well as Kalampatar,
that we'll climb now. So let me switch this camera. Yeah, that's what we need to climb. So that will take us to 5,550. Fortunately, weather is good today, we have the sun, but still it's kind of challenging hike. Let's see. And then after base camp. So here is the view from, you can see the Everest, but from here it's kind of small. And then that's small village of Gorakshep.
The hardest to me was probably the Kilimanjaro. The reason is, yes, you are walking less, but the night of the ascent to the summit, that's during the night, first of all. So that means you go to bed around 7-8 p.m., you wake up midnight, it's really cold, plus you have altitude, probably you start to feel the altitude, and you know that you have to go up for 6 hours, and that 6 hours are on pretty much like kind of a sandy slope. So that means you are going one step forward and then pretty much 2 steps backward. So really challenging, really cold, middle of the night. So yeah, that's a night that I'll remember for quite some time. But yeah, I'll talk about the scenaries and the experience later on. That was worth it, definitely. So I would say, yeah, Annapurna Base Camp, probably the easiest to me. Then comes the Everest Base Camp because it's double the distance, so it's for more days, and for sure that might be more of a challenge. And then finally the Kilimanjaro, because at the end Kilimanjaro takes you to higher altitude in shorter amount of time, which means at some point it has to go way more steep. So now let's talk about the scenaries and the experience of the trek. So I would say again here between the Annapurna Base Camp and the Everest Base Camp, that's pretty similar, because you are staying in guest house, so you will be meeting people. You are in the Himalayas, so you get a pretty nice view all the way, which is probably for me a big differentiator from the Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro, don't get me wrong, it has really great landscape as well, but if you are into snow, mountains, then during the Annapurna Base Camp and the Everest Base Camp, you will see that all the time pretty much you have great views. However, if I look at the summit, right, the last part, because I know lots of you would be always looking at the reward. Well, probably one of the most disappointing would be the Everest Base Camp, because you don't have that much there. To be honest, it's just a rock saying Everest Base Camp, some people taking their picture, but nothing groundbreaking here. You have some summits around the Everest Base Camp that are way more worthy to do, like Kalapatar, for example. I would definitely recommend that. Otherwise, you might be a bit disappointed of your day just getting to that rock saying Everest Base Camp.
Few meters left.
On the Annapurna Base Camp, well, I got a bit unlucky of the weather because it was snowing a lot. I would say it's pretty similar, to be honest. Like nothing really like changed once you get there. You just have like a sign that says Annapurna Base Camp, and that's pretty much it, because at the end of the day, that's a base camp. On the opposite side, the Kilimanjaro was amazing. Kilimanjaro, because you get there around 5-6 a.m., so you get the sunrise from this altitude where you have snow, you have ice, and you see the whole landscape around. That's just unbelievable. So if you are more in the mindset of I want to walk for the reward, then definitely this one will push you, let's say, further. The trek in Nepal were more around nice scenery all the time, while Kilimanjaro was great at the end. Even though during the trek as well you have nice landscape, different type of trees, flowers that are interesting to see, but it's not, to me at least, was not the same as Nepal. If you want more detail or more understanding of what do we mean when we talk about scenaries, you can check my video around Annapurna Base Camp, or the other video around the Kilimanjaro. So now let's talk about how to organize those treks. Is it easy? Is it difficult? Is it more complicated for some of them? Well, to be honest, I would say the Kilimanjaro definitely requires more organization, because you have a team probably that's going to come with you to carry tents, to carry food, to carry anything to cook, because there is really nothing on the way, which is way different than Nepal, where you will have guest house all the way to the top basically. So I would say for Nepal, technically you could do it by yourself. For the Kilimanjaro, the right season would be January to March, and then June to October, more or less. That doesn't mean you cannot go in a different time of the year, but at least that's gonna be the sweet spot in order to go. For the Everest Base Camp and the Annapurna Base Camp, middle of September to November would be probably a right time to go, as well as March, April, and May. So those are the time where you might encounter the best weather. Also, one of the questions that comes up quite often is, do I need to take medication for the altitude sickness? Well, again, that really depends. And sometimes we might think it's really related to the fitness, which isn't always the case. So you could be really fit and then start to face some issues. So one of the recommendations is really make sure you are drinking a lot. That's the first thing. I would recommend to take medication with you. In my example, I know that it starts to trigger pretty much around 4,000 meters. So when I get to this altitude, I know that's probably that normally start to trigger. So you will start to learn about yourself as well in that sense. I would say take medication. I wouldn't take it maybe too early, because I knew some cases where people started to feel a bit sick from stomach point of view. So yeah, just take when you need. For the water, I would also recommend to be careful, especially like, for example, in both options, right? You want to be careful, so you can either buy water in Nepal, which means it's gonna be quite expensive higher you go, or the other option you have is to buy a scenary pen that you will use in order to make sure you are killing any kind of virus or bacteria in your water. So yeah, that would be the cheapest way to get the scenary pen and then to filter your water. Or you always have the option to get water. For Kilimanjaro, as you will be going with a guide, and a tour, they would give you water, so they will have water for you. So then what to see around? Because I don't know about you, but I know when I went there, I was also planning different type of holidays. I really enjoyed, to be honest, the surrounding of the Kilimanjaro, obviously, because you could do the Kilimanjaro, then you could fly to Zanzibar, which is pretty close. If you want to rest your legs, that's a nice break. Or if you're not tired of adventure, then you would go for a safari. And again, probably the best season would be the migration, which happen during summertime. So I would say, in terms of what to do around Kilimanjaro, you have the Kenya. You can do Mount Kenya if you didn't have enough trekking. You can go for a safari, or you can go diving, for example, in Zanzibar, which is like great experience, or just relax on the beach. So lots of things to do for the Kilimanjaro. For Nepal, again, lots of things to do. I would say Nepal is really famous for trekking, because you have so many options. You can extend your trek from a couple of days extra if you would like to. If we talk about Annapurna Base Camp, for example, you have the Poon Hill that is a small extension from the trek that you could do, that gives you a really nice sunrise to see. Or what I did in my case, which was really nice, if you are really interested about wildlife, is to go in the south of the country, and then you can go to the national park where you get the chance to see tigers, rhino, elephant, and bear, all of that within the same park, which is quite amazing. Of course, it requires patience, it requires a bit of time as well, because I went 2 times and I got to see tiger once. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So that's a nice thing to do before, after the trek as well. So to conclude on this, basically, I hope you got the idea of the difference between the different trek. Keep in mind the big topic that we discuss. The first one is about comfort, then fitness, then prices, period of the year, then scenaries, and then also what to see around. So what else to think about, like when you're planning your holidays, what are the extra things you could do. So with all this information in mind, I think you can pretty much start to get an idea where do you want to go. If you are looking into comfort, if you are looking into easy trek, that should give you a good idea. And I hope from the picture and the video that gives you an idea as well of what to expect. Even though I don't want to show you everything, because you should discover it by yourself. That's just to help you to get an understanding of what are your options. So thank you for listening to this video. Hope it was helpful. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any question. You can leave a comment. If you want any recommendation from a tour, I can help you with that. If you want to discuss your route, probably I can help you with this. And then if you're worried about what to pack, what to think about, then also that I can help with. Can help with that. Thank you, and hope you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel, as well as to give a like and some comment on the video. That would be really appreciated. Thank you.